Chapter 1. The Fledgling. The river should not have been that loud. I crouched at the water's edge with my hands cupped beneath the current, and the roar of it filled my skull until I could barely think. Spring melt had come early. The ice had broken upstream, sending chunks rushing past like teeth, white and sharp against the black water. The cold bit into my fingers, numbed my palms, sent aches lancing through my wrists and up my forearms. I drank anyway. 3 days since I had eaten anything but rabbit. The offerings appeared each morning, fresh killed, and I had stopped questioning where they came from. Hunger has a way of erasing principles. The cry came from somewhere upstream, thin, high, wrong in a way I could not immediately identify. Not an animal sound, though it came from the direction of the water. Not a human sound either, though something in its pitch made me think of children, of pain, of desperate, wordless pleading. I rose from my crouch and followed it. The riverbank here was treacherous, slick stones and sudden drops, mud that looked solid until you stepped on it and sank to your knee. I picked my way upstream with one hand on the rocks, watching the churning water for whatever had made that sound. I found it clinging to a half-submerged log. The log had lodged itself against a boulder in the middle of the current, its roots still clotted with dirt. The space beneath those roots formed a kind of cage, dark and cramped, barely big enough for a cat to hide in. Something larger than a cat was hiding there. At first, I thought it was a child. The shape was right, small and thin, barely 4 feet tall, but the proportions were wrong. The limbs too long, the stillness too absolute, too intentional, like a spider waiting at the center of its web. Then the sun shifted, and light fell across the creature's arm. Smoke rose from its skin, not metaphorical smoke, actual smoke. Thin gray curls drifting up from burned flesh, from skin that blistered and blackened wherever the sunlight touched it. The creature pressed itself deeper into the inadequate shade and made that sound again, that high, thin cry of agony and desperation. Gold eyes met mine across the churning water. Gold like coins, gold like fire. Gold like the eyes in my nurse's stories, the ones she had used to scare me into obedience. I knew what it was. I should have run. Instead, I stepped into the river. The cold hit me like a physical blow. I gasped, lost my footing immediately, and the current grabbed me and tried to drag me under. Water filled my mouth, my nose, the screaming inside my skull. I clawed toward the surface, got one desperate breath, went under again. My hand struck wood. The log. I grabbed it without thinking, hauled myself up by the roots, and found myself face to face with the creature I had come to save. It had stopped crying. It stared at me with those gold eyes, utterly still, and in the shadows beneath the roots, I could see its features clearly for the first time. Young, the face of a child who had not yet reached adolescence. Androgynous, sharp-featured, and wrong in ways I could not quite articulate. Something about the smoothness of its skin, something about the absence of breath, the lack of any rise and fall in its narrow chest. The dead do not breathe. I had forgotten that. Shade, I heard myself say, my teeth chattering so hard I could barely form the word. You need more, Shade. The creature blinked, its eyelids sliding closed and open again, with glacial slowness. I dragged myself further onto the log, ignoring the way the current tried to peel me away. The roots formed a cage around both of us now, thick tangles of wood that blocked some of the light. I shoved my body into the gap beside the creature, letting my shadow fall across its burned skin. The smoking stopped. There, I managed through numb lips. Better? The creature did not answer with words. It pressed closer to me instead, seeking the darkness I provided, and I felt its body against my side. Cold. Colder than the water, colder than the ice, colder than anything living should be. Its hands found my arm and gripped tight, too tight, inhuman strength coiled beneath the burned skin. I was going to die here, drowned or drained. It did not matter which. The creature made a small sound. Not a cry this time. Something softer, questioning. Its grip loosened slightly, and then it simply leaned against me, not attacking, not feeding, just resting in the shade I had given it, the way a child might rest against its mother after a nightmare. "All right," I said, to myself as much as to the creature. "We need to get off this log." The swim to shore nearly killed us both. The creature could not tolerate direct sunlight for more than seconds at a time, and I could not swim well enough to carry us both through the current. We made it in stages, lurching from shadow to shadow, a stretch of shade beneath an overhanging branch, a dark patch behind a boulder, the long shadow of a dead tree that had fallen across the river years ago. Each time the light touched the creature's skin, it burned. Each time it burned, it made that high, thin cry of pain. By the time I dragged us onto the far bank, my limbs had stopped responding properly. I collapsed into the dead grass, and the creature collapsed beside me, both of us too exhausted to move. The creature's burns were healing. I watched it happen, watched the blistered skin smooth over, watched the blackened patches fade to angry red, and then to pale pink, and then to the porcelain white of undamaged flesh. Whatever had hurt it, its body knew how to repair the damage. My hand had caught on something during our escape. A root, a rock. I did not remember. Blood welled from my palm in a thin line, dripping onto the grass between us. The creature's nostrils flared. I tried to pull my hand away, but I was too slow. It moved faster than anything I had ever seen. One moment lying still beside me, the next crouching over my arm with its mouth pressed to my palm. I felt lips, tongue, the scrape of teeth too sharp for any human jaw. It drank from me with desperate, shuddering gulps, and I was too exhausted to fight. Then it stopped. It released my wrist and sat back on its heels, staring at me with those gold eyes. Something had changed in its expression. Awareness. Recognition. "Safe," it said, its voice layered and fractured, as if two people spoke through the same throat. "Safe now." Then it curled up beside me and closed its eyes. I should have run, should have crawled away while it slept. But I was so tired, and the creature was so still, and some part of me that I did not want to examine felt something other than fear. When I opened my eyes again, the sun had moved. Hours had passed. The creature still slept beside me, its burned skin completely healed. "We need to move," I said, pushing myself upright with trembling arms. The creature's eyes opened immediately, fixing on my face with unnerving intensity. "Come with me," I continued, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I have shelter. It's dark there. Safe." The creature rose and followed me without a word. The walk back to the cabin took the rest of the daylight. I carried the creature when the path opened into clearings, sheltering it with my body. It walked beside me through the darker stretches, never straying more than an arm's length from my side. When we reached the cabin, I found more rabbits on the doorstep. 3 this time, fresh killed, arranged in a neat row. Someone knew I was not alone anymore. I lowered the creature onto the cot and covered it with the moth-eaten blankets. "Stay," I told it, keeping my voice soft but firm. "I'll find you something to eat." The creature's gold eyes tracked me as I moved around the cabin. but it did not speak. It simply watched, quiet and patient, until the fire was built and the rabbits were cooking, and exhaustion finally dragged me down into sleep. That night, I dreamed of gold eyes in the darkness, watching, waiting, hungry. When I woke before dawn, I crept to the window and looked out. A figure stood at the tree line, man-shaped, still as stone. Its eyes caught the moonlight and reflected it back, gold and burning. It did not move. It did not approach. When I blinked, it was gone.